Oh, I'm not muted. I think people can hear me. Can you hear me, people? I forgot to start the timer on the screen. Here it goes. Okay, now I'm muting myself. Well, this is a good audio check. If you're in the chat, let me know how my audio is. But I'm muting myself now. I'll be back in a second as we wait to get started. All right, everyone, I'm just doing a quick audio check. You should hear me now. Julian in the chat writes, the Discord announcement gave the starting time in the local time zone. And I just want to say thank you. I got to find this person in Discord who taught me how to do this. There's a special way. I can't find, oh, if I go here. Yes, thank you to Draconite. And apologies, by the way, if I know I'm talking over the music, which tends to be a little bit loud compared to my voice. The music will end once we officially get started. But Draconite wrote to me yesterday and said, yesterday at 8:32 p.m. Eastern Time, New York City, said, if you haven't seen it, you can generate timestamps that show in everyone's local time zone using sites like discord-timestamps.com. So thank you for that excellent tip, Draconite. That's how I was able to do that. Alka writes, I like to use HammerTime, hammertime.cu. I'll put this on screen. So one thing you might notice, I also have a new system where during this kind of waiting time before I officially start, I can put your chat comments on the screen. So I don't know, if you have something to say that's interesting, put it in there, I'll put it on the screen. We have people watching from all over the world. I see in the chat Iraq, Northern Germany. Amazing. Happy Friday, August 15th. Well, this song is much longer than I remember. South Africa, flat battery from South Africa. Hello to you. The United States of A. Andy A. Hello from Minnesota. Minnesota, if I, perhaps. We've got Denmark. We've got Ruhrgebiet in Germany. And you think the song's over, but it's not. Keeps going. Ah, hello from Greece. Yasis. I was in Greece this summer. I wish I was there right now. Okay. I think, let's see if this plays. Yeah, all right, we're really getting started now. Here I come on screen. Hello, everybody. Hold on, press this button, hide comment. Oh, hello from Greece is just permanently locked onto the screen now. Hi, everyone, welcome to another live stream from the coding train. That's me. I'm so unprepared that I don't even know where my train whistle is. Oh, there it is. Hold on. Oh boy, this is not the good one, but maybe you heard that. I don't know if noise cancellation is taking off. I don't know why this comment. It's fine. Let's try adding another one. Noor from Morocco. Okay, let's see if I can get this comment to go away. Yes, okay. No comments on the screen. Just me, Dan. Welcome. You might be surprised to see me so soon, given that the time between my previous last two streams was, I don't know, 6 months to a year. And now the last time I streamed was like, I don't know, a week ago. And here I am again. Now, if you missed first of all, if you're totally new to the channel, hello, everyone. My name is Dan. This is the Coding Train, where I tend to, what do I tend to? That's a weird thing to say, but I produce, I create, I broadcast live sessions about coding, creativity, art, technology, mostly using a library called p5.js, which is the entire subject of today's live stream. I also upload, standalone videos, which are tutorials or coding challenges. Sometimes I'll even do something. I'm looking over in the corner of this room here. I've got an old Apple II Plus computer. So I have been kind of not very much on YouTube in the last year, smattering, a petering, a little blip here and there, but I'm kind of working my way towards more active presence of live streams and video uploads starting in September. So if you missed my previous live stream, which was maybe about a week ago or so, you can go back and find it. Archives, I kind of went through my schedule and plan. And during that session, in fact, I'm gonna see if this works. I used this, I have this new smartboard thing here, and I talked about how, yes, one of the things that I want to do, and sorry, the lighting in here is a little bit dark. I've got to work on that, but I wanted you to be able to see this, is that I want to focus some of my energy this fall on covering what are some new features about in the p5.js library. You might not even be aware that as of today and as of a while now, there is a beta p5.js 2.0, which has a bunch of new things. I made a list of them here. There's some variable fonts and some shader stuff and new shape geometry. But you don't need to hear about that from me. I'm just a, wackadoodle guy on the internet talking about coding. So before I get to the fall, where I'm going to start to go through some of those features myself in tutorial form, I wanted to invite on to the show. Is this a show? I don't know. Maybe that's a little bit too much to say. To the stream, to the Coding Train, to the YouTube channel, representatives from p5.js, the Processing Foundation. If you're not aware, the Processing Foundation was formed in 2012. I was part of the creation of the Processing Foundation, a nonprofit here in the US to maintain the software and community for processing, which I got to watch the time here. If I start talking about what processing is, I'll be here for another half an hour. Shortly thereafter, Lauren Lee McCarthy created p5.js and joined the Processing Foundation. The Processing Foundation has gone through many changes over the years, expanded new programs. I'm not going to pull up the website right now and get lost into that, but but you should check out the Processing Foundation's website. But today the focus is, and I actually am going to bring up, I'm going to introduce our guest, because I have a problem where I have a guest, and if I'm not careful, I talk for like an hour, and we're just going to be here for like an hour. So I'm going to switch over to this screen here, which I'm standing in front of Kit here. So, okay, so a couple things. Let me just mention a couple things. One is, bear with us, give us some grace here. This is the first time I'm using this setup with a guest coming onto the coding train. We tested the setup earlier this morning, at least my time this morning. It might be whatever time it is for you. And things worked, but I wouldn't be surprised if things go wrong. So just bear with us. This is going to be super informal, friendly. If we have to pause and fix something, we'll do that, etc. So a couple things. So this is the p5.js website. You can read all about, there are various links to GitHub issues and a Discord post where you can read all about p5.js 2.0. If you're watching this later, look in the video description. It's not there now, but after this is over, I will put all sorts of links to all the reference material and examples, the p5.js 2.0 website, etc. there. So, but without further ado, let me introduce Kit. So first, let me go to the p5.js about page, and I'm just going to move my window over here. Oh, you're seeing my you're seeing all sorts of other things behind there. Okay. So one of the things I encourage you to do if you haven't, if you've used p5.js, if you've watched any of my tutorials but never taken the time to click on the About page of p5.js, I highly encourage you to do so. You can learn a little bit more about what is p5.js, the community statement, but here's what I'm here to focus on, people. So one of the things you might not be aware of is that p5.js has, well, first of all, there's team of many people who work on it, but it has a unique model in open source, which is a rotating project lead. Lauren Lee McCarthy created p5.js and was the lead between 2013 and 2020. There have been a rotating set of leads. Most recently was Chen Yi, who was the p5 lead starting in 2021, and just almost a year ago, I think in November 2024, Kit Kuksenok joined as the p5.js lead. So Kit is a Berlin-based artist, writer, and coder. They have a PhD in computer science and engineering from the University of Washington. I was lucky enough to get to meet Kit in person on a brief visit to New York City and learn all about their work and their goals and desires and hopes and dreams and fears for p5.js. And so we're going to learn, I'm going to bring Kit on now, and I'm going to let Kit introduce themselves, say hello, and then I'm going to just kind of turn over the stream to them to do a bit to talk about p5.js 2.0, show you some code stuff. I'm going to follow the chat. I'll be favoriting your, if there's a kind of important, relevant question, I might pop in and ask it during Kit's, I don't want to say presentation, sounds too formal, but during Kit's time, but towards the end, we'll do a Q&A. So let me see here. I'm going to press my first guest button, which is going to put us both on screen. Hi, Kit, you're on screen now. Oh, and there's a comment from earlier, which I'm going to remove. Kit, welcome. Welcome to the Coding Train. Thanks so much for being here. How are you doing?
Hi, thanks so much for hosting this. I'm doing pretty well. I'm in Berlin now, so it is 5 p.m. So I'm glad the timing worked out. And thanks for this amazing introduction. Actually, for those of you who are going to the processingfoundation.org page, if you look at one page on that site, you should look at the fellowships because we've been running a fellows program for a number of years, and there's some really interesting projects there.
Great. And
But yeah, happy to be here.
yeah, and so the fellowship, it's something that I have definitely talked about before. There's many opportunities for people who are watching if you want to get involved in open source, in community, in the Processing Foundation. There's the fellowship program. There's also, Google Summer of Code is happening this summer. Is that, I guess, wrapping up soon? Are there students working on p5.js 2.0 even as part of that?
That's a really awesome question. There's folks working on 3 different projects. You can also follow we do announcements on Instagram and on the newsletter, but there will definitely be wrap-up posts coming up. There are 3 projects, part of the Google Summer of Code program. One of them looks at creating a more friendly kind of p5.js sketch embedder tool, because there's many ways to bring p5 sketches into a website or a portfolio. But these can be a little bit tricky to really tune to one's particular specific website or portfolio needs. So that's one project. Another project is improving parts of the p5.js editor. And another project is looking at improving the experience of a contributing translation. So especially if you're thinking about contributing to p5.js, there's so many different ways to contribute. The contributor model that we use is all contributors, which means that it's not just code contributions, but all sorts of contributions that are recognized as extremely valuable. So actually, maybe if I share this, can I share the screen for just a moment without like
Oh
getting
yeah,
into
yes, go for it. Go
presentation?
for it. I'm gonna switch you over. There we go.
Okay. So I just wanted to share this page. So this is the README from GitHub. And here you can see a very long list of people who have contributed to p5.js. There's over 700 people. And these are folks who are contributing to code by writing features, but also by documenting, by testing, by finding bugs, by hosting events, by creating educational materials, so all sorts of things, and by translation. So the third project on for Google Summer of Code is going to be a translation-based project too. So I think that's all really exciting. If you want to get started contributing, this is like there's so many different places to get started, and I'm really happy to speak to that later, or whenever people ask questions. Okay, you don't have to keep sharing that.
Okay, no, Scott, go back to you. It's okay. I'm having so much fun with my new buttons and my new system. This is actually working better than I expected. And I see that Sable Raff is in the chat, another part of the Processing Foundation. I've been working on processing and other community things. And check out the Creative Coding Challenge. Is that what it's called? On Twitch. Raphael's stream. Anyway, okay, I'm not going to plug other people's stuff. Okay, so I'm going to turn over here. I guess I want to start with a question, which you can, if you want, just kind of, I'm sure you're going to talk about anyway, but I think what's probably on a lot of people's minds, especially, I teach, so I have fall classes starting in like 2 weeks, and I hear from and work with a lot of teachers in universities in the US and K through 12 education. So if you're like a teacher and you've been teaching your high school class with P5 for the last 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5, what's happening now? Should you just be teaching as you normally would with 1.0? Should you be switching to 2.0? I mean, this is a big question, but I guess this is the question that I get. You're like, what do I need to worry about? What do I need to think about as the fall semester is approaching? And spoiler alert, my hope is to, on the coding train, help people figure this out this fall, as I'll be figuring it out for myself. But I wanted to hear from you, Kit, maybe what you have to say in terms of the timeline.
Well, to start with, the most important thing is that whatever your experience with it or your questions or thoughts about it are, please feel free to get in touch on many of the different ways that you can. So you can email me, you can find open hours, like office hours, a calendar booking link, there's Discord, there's Discourse. With 2.0, it is now live and you can use it. You can try it out. I can show a few things with it, but it will not be the default in the p5.js editor for at least a year. And when I say at least a year, I mean that if there are specific things that the community needs more of or done differently in the package, that this is a timeline that is meant to support the community. So this is one of those things where there are so many improvements under the hood in 2.0 that makes so many things possible that it would be really great to make it more and more widely available, but not at the expense of all the resources that people have already created. And so if you're teaching now, then certainly you don't need to change anything for at least a year. So nothing, it's an option, but it's an opt-in kind of option on the editor. And it's something that if you do look into updating your materials, then it would be really great to hear from you, to hear your experience, what we can do to make that smoother, what kind of resources we can put out more of, because we are developing more and more resources, like, basically each month. So there'll be a couple of new tutorials available. There was another one that just published earlier this week as part of another kind of tutorial related to the shader authoring part of 2.0. So there's a lot of different aspects of 2.0 that will require changing materials, but this does not need to be something that just happens to you. I mean, the ethos of the project is very much building the tools that we use. And so making the 2.0 available is an invitation for you to use the tool and to participate in the process of making decisions about it.
Wonderful, thank you. Yeah, and so for me, like just so if people are curious, I am planning to, in my classes this fall, switch over to P5 2.0 to learn and about how it works, to learn some of the new features, to hopefully find some things that maybe I could report back to the P5.js team that maybe students got confused by or didn't work. So, and I will be in addition to teaching my classes at NYU, I'll be recording and having sessions where I'll be going through that stuff here on the channel. So if you want to follow more about P5 2.0, hopefully I can be a resource and this channel can be a resource for you as well. Okay, so I think what I want to do now that we've kind of gotten started, had a little introduction, is I'm going to switch over. I'm going to put your screen share on, Kit.
Okay.
So I'm going to fade into the background here and follow the chat. And let you, Kit, you take it over and present what you want to talk about with P5.2. And then as you're wrapping up, I'll have collected hopefully some questions and we can switch to a bit of Q&A mode. So without further, I keep saying without further ado, that's like the second or third time.
With further ado.
I'll pass it on to you. You're on screen. Kit can't see what I brought. The one thing I haven't figured out is how to show Kit what scene is actually being shown to you, the audience. But so I'm just telling them you're on screen with your screen share.
Okay, thanks so much. Okay, so to start with, if you go to the p5.js editor, there is a new part of the UI where you can change the library that you're using. So just to point out kind of what's happening with 2.0, which is you can select the new library. Also want to point out a few resources that are available. So for example, you can review what all it was in the release. We've had minor releases and patches since then, but what was in the original release? So that could give you a good overview of what were the new things. I won't go through all of it today, but there's also compatibility and transition resources. So for example, if there's a feature in 2.0 that you want to use and you don't want to change your code from 1.x, you can use compatibility add-on libraries. So if you toggle these on, then you will be able to use most of the code from 1.x with 2.0 features. Again, if you find issues with this, please report them. And for most part, most things don't need to change, but there's a few things that do. And this page lists all of them. So this is what's linked under library management and compatibility and transition resources.
Sorry to interrupt you, Kit. I'm getting a couple comments that maybe that's still a little bit small. So if we want to just zoom into the screen a little bit, I think that settings page is a little small. That obviously the code font size, I think it's good, but sorry to interrupt you. That's great. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I'll zoom back out in a moment for code, but I just want to make sure that this is your sort of one point of information. So if you're trying to use something from a 2.0 sketch in your 1.x sketch and you're not sure what's going on, like how to connect those two things, this is kind of the resource that you can use. But for today, I'll show you one thing that I don't know if those of you who do work with P5, whether you worked much with text. So I'll just make a little small sketch with a text on it. And I'll go through it from the start. So I've switched the version to 2.0. I'll make the background white. And I'll just print out something really simple. In the center of the screen. Okay, so far so good. One of the things that's new in 2.0 is a lot of improvements to the typography part of it. So writing text, working with interesting fonts. So one of the things that we now support directly is variable fonts. So if you don't work with fonts, this might be also a little bit new, but there's a type of font, and this is just an example, where there's a smooth variation of some variable. In this case, weight. It's often weight, but it's not always weight. So I'll give an example with this particular font. So if I went through the whole flow of getting the font, or I can download it from a TTF or OTF file from somewhere else, I can actually, let's see, I can load that font directly from the URL. So I can download it, but I don't have to. And then I look at this, I'm like, something's not quite working. So what I want to do is I want to create the canvas, wait for the font to load, and then draw it. So this is something that's new in 2.0, which is support for asynchronous processing. So here I use the keywords async await, which are also part of the new documentation on the beta.js.org site. So you can go there to reference, you can go to examples, and those have been updated to work with 2.0, and they demonstrate all the changes. And here I want to use this font. And I want to set the weight. And there's a couple of things here in the URL, like, okay, well, the weight can be between 100 and 900, so I'll just make it something. Okay, well, that's not big enough to see at all, so I'll make it a lot larger. And what if I make it much heavier? Oh, that's not the weight, that's the size, so I change it here. All right, well, that's nice, but why don't we use something that actually takes advantage of the draw loop that is being rendered every single time that we're running a frame? So maybe I can create some sort of pacing of this weight that's based maybe on frame count. And it's a little bit slowed down. So by dividing it by 100, I'm slowing it down a little bit relative to the frame count. And by using a sine function, I'm making it the pacing go up and down, kind of. And then rather than 800, I can use the pacing, but not directly, because that's going to be a number from -1 to 1. So rather, I can use map from, and take that number, which should be from -1 to 1 if it's a sine function, and make it go from 100 to 900, which is what we know the variable font can be, because that's what we've seen in the UI. That's what's part of the font information. And so then we can see how that, like, it animates smoothly in and out, and that's something that we can start to work with. Okay, so what else? As we've mentioned, p5.js is the core library, but there's also a lot of resources that are developed by the community. Many of the libraries work out of the box with 2.0. For example, I'm going to share a library that was made for 2.0 for this part of the text, which is p5.waf2, which helps to do a little bit more advanced stuff with fonts. But also, if you're getting started with p5 and you're wondering, like, how do I capture, how do I make videos, there's also a library for that. And there's a lot of different libraries that are listed on the community page. So the functionality of the core library itself is something that is used by many add-ons, and that can provide a lot of really interesting possibilities too. So I'm going to go ahead and add that library. Well, actually, I did before. I just commented it out. But there you go. And what can I do with that next? Okay, so it's just kind of like looping the text. But what I'd rather do is that I want to create some sort of shape around each letter. And this is something that I can create a new function for. So that function is going to look a lot like the function that we have for drawing the text. So I'll just try and replace it. And I'll try and do something slightly different. So there's a new part of the 2.0 API called textToContours. So if you've used text to points before, it's similar to that, but it creates points for each word, for each letter in the word or the text that you give it. So it looks and feels in many ways similar, but it's textToContours. And I'm going to sample it really, really low. So what that's going to do is it's going to pick a couple of points along each letter. And before I do anything else, I'm just going to draw what those points are. And this is one of those things where if you're looking at example code, or if you're reading this code, if you are familiar with the syntax, then that's one thing. But if you're not familiar with the syntax, what I would really encourage you to do is treat this as a language. Programming language is also language, meaning that if you try to read it through, it does try to sort of explain what it's doing. So a lot of APIs were written as a result of people talking about what does it sound like? What do people think it's going to be like? So as a point of history, the 2.0 project started at the end of 2023. So it's over a year old, which means that since the end of 2023, the community, particularly the contributors active on GitHub, but also anyone who participated as a result of like the newsletter, requests for comment and feedback, specifically discussed what do we add that people can understand intuitively? So this idea of like, what does it sound like? What would you think it would do based on reading it? That is how people discuss what to add. And that is something that, so if it doesn't meet that idea, if it's something that's confusing in that way, that is something that we want to know in like a conversation of how the API can improve in the future. So let's say in this case, okay, so we have contours. And so intuitively, what's happening with text-to-contours? What have I tried to describe? That it gives you points per letter in the whole text. Okay, so that means that there's going to be a list of letters, and inside each letter, there's going to be a list of points. And so that's what I'm going to try to do here. So even if this is like different, like new syntax for you, what I would encourage you to do is like take this and modify it in your own ways, change parts of it. So for example, if you're following along, change this 10 to something else, see what that's going to do. And so then I have this sort of slightly more abstract representation of this text. So anytime that you encounter code that you have no idea what it does, I think one of the things I like to do with like exploring code is like change whatever number you see in there. So let's say I see this 10. I can make this 10 smaller or bigger and see what happens. What else can I change? What other numbers are here? Okay, there's a sample factor. What does that do? That changes the number of times that a point is sampled along each letter. So I'm going to make that smaller again because I want to continue to be a little abstract. What other numbers are there? Okay, well, there's this text size. Maybe I can make it a little bit bigger. Sure. And then there's this background. So I can also make it into a particular color. So now we've created a circle along each point, and rather than just having this like individual circles, I'm going to connect them to some sort of shape. And so rather than drawing individual circles, I'm going to use the sort of bookending logic of beginning a shape and ending a shape and starting a contour and ending a contour here. And I'll sample it a little lower. And then it becomes extremely abstract and unreadable. But that all depends on what you create. So, okay, so I've created sort of a 2D shape. I could also try to make it a little bit smoother. But one thing that maybe could be interesting to do is to take it into 3D. And before I do that, Dan, is there any like comments or questions from you or from the folks in the chat?
There's been a lovely discussion in the chat about frame count and deltaTime. Which, by the way, so there was a question. I guess I can bring some of these up onto the screen. There was a question that was asked: is there any global variable like frame time instead of frame count? I prefer the time for physics simulation. Of course, Sable Raf chimed in and referenced that there is a p5 function called deltaTime, which I realize I'm not on screen here. Let me press a little button here so I appear. Oh, we lost the comment. It's fine. I can bring it back. Okay, everything's good now. I didn't know that deltaTime existed. So today I learned there is a p5 function called deltaTime. What does that function do? And if you know, Kit, and also I don't know if you know this, but people were also asking and wondering if the draw loop is actually just implemented with request animation frame.
Yeah. So I mean, it's tied very much to like just the way that the canvas is implemented.
Yeah.
So I've pulled up the deltaTime here, and so to be honest, I'm not sure how different it is from Millie's. I guess it's just a number
Yeah. I
that's
think
like to the
without,
same but
yeah.
slightly different range.
Right. Without reading the reference page, which is the thing I should do, my speculation is milliseconds is the amount of milliseconds that's passed since you pressed play or since you started the sketch.
Yeah.
Um, and so if you wanted to know how much time passed from one frame to another, you'd have to save milliseconds and do your own comparison. So my guess is deltaTime is doing that. It's maybe telling you how long it's been since the previous frame, but that's just total speculation. But this is like, it's actually a really great question. This comes up a lot. You know, I have my Nature of Code book and materials with this question of trying to do physics simulation and like, am I thinking about like how fast this is moving according to like real physical like time, or according to like,
Hmm.
you know, animation time, which is like how many frames, and in theory it's 30 frames per second, but it's not exactly that. So anyway, we're a little bit into the weeds off topic here, but
Yeah, I was gonna say
yeah.
the main reason that like I use frameCount is primarily because I like to be able to slow things down and speed things up occasionally. Yeah, I also noticed that I think I'm not able to like share my video simultaneously as sharing screen simultaneously as running that sketch on my giant monitor. So I'm gonna
Ah,
change the dimensions of the because it's one of those things where it's just like it's like a pick two out of three kind of situation.
yeah, yeah. I
Um,
noticed your video was starting to
yeah,
get a
please
little
please let me
choppy.
know when that happens because it's one of those things like the monitor
Ah,
is very nice and large, but
oh,
it's really a large number of pixels.
and while we're here, okay, okay. So deltaTime. There's some other comments, but this is actually a really
Yeah.
interesting question, which
Mhm.
Ahmed asks, does this contouring code work for other languages, for example, Arabic? And I think I kind of have an answer of my speculation here, but I don't know if Kit, if you
Please
know.
speculate.
Oh, well, okay. So my assumption here, and I'll go back to this screen. I'm sorry, trying to do too many things at once here. So there's sort of this question of what does P5's code base support, which is where the question starts, and I think is the right question to ask, and I think is a really important question, and especially like people like me, who is the kind of like just your run of the day, like, you know, mediocre American guy. It's very, very self-centered and focused on like the English language. And there's so many other languages that people speak, as well as character sets and alphabets and all sorts of stuff. So I really appreciate you asking the question to think about it. So my speculation here is that P5 is adding features to be able to manage, manipulate, control the underlying font rendering of the browser itself. So if the
Yep.
browser and Canvas supports, the Arabic characters, or then through a font, then all of this variable weight contours should also work as well. That's my kind of
Yeah.
guess here.
So the things that's needed for this, so there's a couple things that I'm going to point out, which is to do the variable font stuff, all it needs to do to have is like the font needs to support that technology. Like that's a type of technology. Am I still lagging?
No, you're good now, I think. Yeah,
Okay, I'm just going to stop preemptively though.
yeah.
But yeah, so that here, whatever you load in load font doesn't have to be a link. It can also be something that you're hosting, like an OTF file or TTF file. If that has character sets for Arabic, for Cyrillic, for Chinese, for traditional and simplified, or any other language, any other character set, then that can be usable in the sketch, assuming that it can also be rendered like in the browser. So with any other character set, there's also a question of like what's the encoding of the file and so on. So that might need a little bit of debugging, but the loading of the font is the important part. And yeah, so 2.0 introduced a lot of improvements to how to like what is able to be loaded. So like loading from a URL and being able to use that is a part of it. The one thing that I will really point out and encourage you to get involved with if you're interested in working with fonts is this WAV2 library.
Mm.
So for example, you might have noticed that when I went from just animating with variable weight to using contours, I needed glyph data that I would not have been able to get from that URL from Google Fonts without using this additional library. So this additional library runs underneath overloads what happens with load font and makes those glyphs available. Now, one thing I will say about like additional fonts and other character sets that are not English is that like I think it's also really an important and interesting aspect that I'd really like to look into, of how to kind of create more resources of how to work with those fonts. Because everything I just mentioned is like, oh, load this and load that, and also check the file encodings. This is something that like, as a like English is, I have a native level English now. I use it all the time, but it's not my first language, and my first language does not use the Latin character set. And so like the amount of like intuitive debugging of file encodings that I just do on a regular basis, if I'm trying to work with a like non-English language, is like really high. And so I think it would be really nice to like use these new typography features, to like make those languages more available for people's sketches.
Yeah, yeah, and this really resonates with me because for me, I teach classes at NYU, and many of the students are from other countries and speak other
Yeah.
languages, and so what's the most wonderful experience that I have is like I made this example, I made this thing, we showed it in class, and I can't really anticipate or understand how it's going to be used by people who come from different perspectives and other cultures. Then they go and
Yeah.
try that, and maybe something breaks or something changes, or they discover something new, and I get that feedback. It's a wonderful cycle. So I think that same thing could apply here. So to the audience, like try all this stuff out with your own native language, your own native
Yeah.
ideas, and share that back with the
Yeah,
community.
please tell me how that
Yeah.
goes. Like we're very actively seeking people to try this out with other languages, and both to find interesting possibilities to share. So, for example, sharing examples, sharing tutorials, and so on. If you have created something that is really that like might be inspiring to others, but also finding problems. Because I think this is one of those things like, yes, it's true that most of the tutorials start in English and then are translated to other languages, which I think is kind of the other thing that I would be really excited about, is having a lot more education resources that are primarily in non-English languages first, and then maybe get translated back to English. And I think that the typography improvements in 2.0 kind of make some of that a little bit more possible, but I think that there's definitely still space for feedback, for ideas, for growth. So I really hope that like if you're interested in it, you try to use it. Okay.
Great. Yeah. I'm keeping track of some other questions. This is actually a good one here. That's some of them I'm just saving for later, but here's a good one that's on topic for what we're talking about now. Oh, actually, well, so this is actually, well, it's on topic and it extends beyond, but I'll ask it anyway because I said so. This question says, do you know if there are any plans to make P5 Woof work as a node module? I think this is a bigger question in terms of, and maybe again, we could easily get lost into the technical weeds here, but I guess that's sort of an interesting question to think about. To what extent, and I also, I'm not able to finish the question. I got to keep putting caveats here. My understanding of the audience and most of the people that I work with who are learning P5, they're really focused on the client-side JavaScript, the drawing, animation, media making in the browser. But there is a world of JavaScript development, web development, project build systems, project development that uses Node.js as kind of like the foundational platform.
Yeah.
Does P5 2.0 work with Node? Do some of the libraries? Is there a short answer to this like bigger question, or a direction we could
I
look
don't
in
know if I'm
those
gonna
fields?
do super short answer.
Yeah.
The folks who are interested in that, I'd really encourage you to check the release notes for the last 2.x patches. There's a couple of improvements for like the ESM file that comes with it. There's like a new template for add-on libraries, and so there's just a bunch of things that like make it possible to do that with 2.0. But this is one of those things where if you either want to get involved or request particular directions, it would be good to have that input. There's a particular issue. I forget the number off the top of my head, but it's one of the recent ones where we're discussing kind of how to make a more modular kind of version of p5.js, which again is still really focused on this like client side use that Dan described, but I hope can also like address some of the other uses. Yeah.
Yeah, and I just want to highlight Shin from the Processing Foundation mentioned if you are making sketches, tutorials, or other resources in P5 2.0, use the hashtag, and I put this on screen, P5V2, and that way the team can find your work.
Can I actually read aloud and answer one of the questions like just above that, which is I'm wondering from Kathy. I'm wondering whether extrusion would work the same for foreign fonts. Yes. So I think we got more into the discussion, which I love. But like the next step of that would have been to use text-to-model, and this code, the exact code that I showed with text-to-model, with like a lot of like in WebGL, it will extrude it. And you can work with text as a 3D object. So we can definitely try that out. Should I do that now, or would that be fun?
Yeah, why not? I guess I don't
Sure.
have so yeah, we have time. So whatever you want to show is great. I'm like looking at 5 different things at once and pressing buttons while you're getting that set up. I'll just point out
like a control room sense over there.
Raphael says there's also a new community curation coming up that will show a lot of multilingual examples in P5 2.0. So be on the lookout for that. All right, you are full screen, you and your screen share again. So
all right, cool. So I'll copy paste rather than type. Actually, no, I will go through it step by step. Okay, so what I've created here is, and please stop me if I start lagging again. So this is once again our familiar sketch where we're in canvas mode. We're using textToContours to create these shapes. Okay, so we're gonna work with 3D in a second in WebGL, which means that we're also going to place the text in the middle of the screen. And just, if this is a little bit confusing, it's because the coordinates of the canvas start in a different place than in WebGL. So this will place it in the same spot. And rather than creating the contours, I'm going to use textToModel. Really similar syntax. So I have word, position, sample factor, and extrude. And let's say okay. Cool.
Wow.
Ta-da! So the features of the font itself work. I mean, again, it's really downsampled. But yeah,
and I think you are frozen. I think you're frozen again, but we can hear you just fine, and I see the image. But I think you're
I've stopped it.
Yeah. I think we didn't catch some of the rotation maybe that you were trying to do, but we get the idea. And we can also what we can do is I can put the link, like we can share these sketches. Obviously, I can share them in the Coding Train Discord and on social media or whatever. But what I can do is any sketches that you make here, I can put a link to them in the video description, so that when people come back to it afterwards, they can find and run them.
Yeah, I'll share the links with you of those. But yeah, so I think this is one of those things where like it'll be really exciting to see what people do with these basic building tools, like basic in the sense of they're foundational. This is not a complete work. This is something for you to take as a little brick in your process. Yeah. Okay. Any other kind of questions or topics that we should touch on, do you think?
So did you have other things you want to cover in sort of about P5 2.0? I have some questions that I've noted down that are kind of off to other things / like more wrapping up questions, but I just want to
I guess I'll quickly do a very, very, very quick like non-demo rundown of what else is in 2.0 in case people are interested.
That's one of my questions. And in fact, I think one thing that's helpful also, if you could note, is, and I think this was asked, I think Alka had asked earlier, just curious about what, if any, things are breaking changes in 2.0
Yes,
versus new
phenomenal question.
features.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um, is my screen being shared at the moment?
Yep.
Is that
Yep.
happening?
It's
Cool.
quite small, so you'll need to zoom in quite a bit to that for
Oh,
people
yeah,
to see
okay.
it.
Thank you for reminding me about that.
Yeah.
Once again, I
Uh,
am spoiled by my monitor. Okay, so a couple of different things. So when we released 2.0.0 in April, this is kind of the notes, and this is the main source of like truth of what is there or not there. So if you're interested in what exactly is or isn't there, the release notes are a really good resource. So I walked through some of the text related stuff, but a lot of other stuff I didn't mention. For example, color modes. There's a few updates to shapes I did sort of touch on briefly, if you, but not extensively. And let's see. There's also a functionality for authoring shaders with JavaScript, and that's covered under tutorials. So these are all resources that are useful. Now, when it comes to the idea of breaking changes, so when we released this library, in even start for in this or this version, even in starting planning 2.0, that team, which at that time I wasn't part of Processing Foundation yet, even at that time, the idea was to use semantic versioning, which means that each of these three numbers means something in particular. When the third number is increased, it's mostly small improvements, documentation improvements, and bug fixes. So that's a patch. Then the middle number is a minor release. That's like something is added without any breaking changes to the API. The fact that there is a major version release is what allows to create space for like pretty potentially large changes to the API. So the breaking changes that you specifically can look through and like step like point by point are in this compatibility resource. So this is going to walk through a couple of different things. First, it provides you a couple of add-ons that are available directly from the editor. So if I open the editor and I see here the compatibility add-ons, I hope you can see this.
Yeah.
Preload, shapes, and data structures. Those are the three areas of potential compatibility. Those add-ons are in this repository. So this repository provides those add-ons which you can use from the editor. So if you have your 1.x sketch and you want to try a 2.0 feature without changing anything in your sketch, those add-on libraries are there to help. However, if you want to use the new 2.0 features, then you can also turn off the compatibility add-ons and potentially change some of your code. One thing that you might have noticed in this, like in the code that I shared, would be async await keyword syntax rather than preload. That's one of them. Again, this is sort of put back with the preload add-on. Then there's a couple of points that only affect add-on people who write add-on libraries. So like if you're an author of an add-on library and you're wondering how should I change this? First of all, try it with 2.0 and see if it works, because actually we've gone through and we've tested a lot of the community libraries listed on the p5.js.org site, and most of them work without any changes. So it's possible your sketch or your library will just work. If it doesn't work because it's loading assets, this is an example of what you would have to do to update it. Then there's shapes, which are now a little bit easier to change between different types of shapes. And here we have a bunch of different side-by-side of what it looks like in 1.x and in 2.x, and some descriptions. One thing, I don't know how much you've used like curve vertex, which is now spline vertex. I don't know how much you've used that, but if you connect it's used to kind of just make this like little loop-de-loop, and now it's fully smooth. So if you,
The thing that I always, so let me
yeah,
ask you a question. So first of all,
yeah,
this is so great, and this is exactly like, what I hope to, starting in the fall. I'm going to go through this page and try to like understand it myself and make examples and talk through it on the channel. But one of the things that I always found with curve vertex is, because a curve needs a like leading point to tell it where to curve into, a lot of examples would sort of duplicate the same point twice at the start and the end. And it looks like to me, as part of this, like eliminating that need and sort
yes,
of doing some kind of auto magic algorithmic way
Yes.
of understanding how to make a curve without that leading point. Is that right?
So there's so many things about curves that are much more intuitive now. So it is like looking at these side by side and switching from one to the other, like it's true, it's a change. Nevertheless, you don't have to do the weird leading and like trailing point. You can like, in order to create this behavior, you do what you think you would do, which is you identify the points, you say that it's going to be a curve, and it sorts itself out. So that was like a lot of discussion about that, about how to design kind of like the API around these custom shapes. And this is something that like is one of the improvements that like the 2.0 API is easier to use and to learn in a sense of that there's a lot more consistency between them. So rather than having curved vertex that takes 2 numbers and then quadratic vertex that takes 4 numbers and then Bezier vertex that takes 6 numbers, there's Bezier vertex. You have 3 of them. Those are the 3 different points. Those are the anchor points for your curve. It's of order 3. That's how you know that it has to be in sets of 3. And if it's a quadratic vertex, then it's Bezier order 2 with pairs of vertices because it's related. They're not radically different things. So in this sense, it's trying to kind of create a little bit more consistency between the different ways to create shapes. So if you want to maintain the functionality of your older sketches, you can use the this shapes compatibility add-on. So if you just have your previous 1.x code with shapes and it does exactly how you want it to do and you don't want anything different about it, you turn that on. And then you can use stuff from the 2.0 library. But if you would like to author stuff in the new 2.0 library, then you can start from scratch with kind of the new spline vertex and vertex syntax.
Yeah. While we're here, I know we're kind of jumping around a bit, but this is a
Sure.
note that I made to myself that I thought would be really important to address because I've seen people encounter this new library management tab and have some confusion around it. So I wonder if you
Yes.
could briefly explain what the library management tab does and when you can use it versus when you need to go and manually edit the HTML page. And does those ever come in conflict with each other, or what kinds of things should users be thinking about
Yeah.
between when adding libraries manually versus that tab?
Great question. So let's see. To start with, I hope this is visible, but let me know if I should make it any larger or smaller or anything. The main thing is that you're going to see the version summarized in the top. It will continue to add the new patches from both 1.x and 2.x. So this is like the main place that you can switch it. This is the thing when we talk about it's not going to be default in the editor until next year. This is the thing. When you open the editor, it's 1.x, and then you have to proactively switch to it. So there's not supposed to be any surprises. These additional libraries, for example, historically, I don't know if you've looked at your like index HTML recently, but usually the P5 sound add-on library is included by default. And so if you're not using that, you have to like remove it proactively. So this is sort of doing a similar thing, but it's using, again, a different part of sound. So there's also like the newer version of sound, which by the way is actually compatible with both. But just to try and keep this tab a little bit clearer, this one's going to go into the beta sound reference. So everything having to do with 2.0 is going to go into beta.p5js.org, and everything having to do with 1.x is going to go to the main top level p5js.org. So that's like the main thing. And then the compatibility add-on libraries, if you, for example, try to use your 1.x sketch with like variable fonts, for example, just to name one thing, but you want to keep everything else exactly the same, and you've turned all these on, and it still does not work, then file an issue in the compatibility library or in the main repository. Report that as a problem, because the idea is to make these things compatible and durable. So the idea is that these compatibility libraries are there if you want to keep 1.x sketch stuff and also use some 2.0 features. Why wouldn't you want to do that? Like, under which cases would you not just do that? Well, if you prefer to use the 2.0 syntax. So if you prefer to use the more intuitive shapes, or any of the other aspects of it that we didn't go too far into it. So
Yeah. But just to be clear, the source of truth, like what the sketch is actually using, is what is in index.html. You can
yes,
always manually edit version numbers, library references there. The tab is just doing some kind of automatic parsing of that file for
yes.
you, and
So let's
but it's limited to just like this like selection of like which P5 version and these like compatible. It's not like there's a bazillion P5 libraries that you can't add through the library management tab. You still have to do those manually.
Yeah, so you can still add those manually. And let's say we've actually removed, like I went ahead and I removed the library. So what happens? It says custom P5.
Ah,
And this is a general suggestion. If you're not sure what something's going to do, try and break it and see what happens. So it's going to say, okay, cool, that's fine, you got this. This is you're doing your own thing. If you want to return back to like having it managed through the tab, you can paste this, but this tab is there as a helpful optional thing to be able to switch to 2.x. If you at any point start to add your own libraries, then I mean we trust that you have some idea of like where you want to take that.
yeah. There's also a question from the chat, which I'll read. Has there been any discussion of which P5 libraries are compatible with P5 too? I guess I'll rephrase that. So, is anybody keeping track? Is there a list of like on the web page, like these are 2.0 compatible, these are 1.0, these we're not sure about? I mean, that's like a huge. I don't know how anybody how that could be tracked so easily, but is that
So
something people are? Yeah.
in terms of a like list that you can see, I think that would be very, very hard to maintain, especially right now because many libraries are trying to update their functionality to work with 2.0. What we did before release and shortly after is we went through and we tried all of the community libraries, and like when I say we, as like the maintainer team, and like we have so many people working on this who's not just me, and I'm just here, but there's a lot of folks that have been working on this also before I even joined the foundation. But we went through and we checked compatibility with every library, which means we tried all their examples with switching the version, and we saw if it worked out of the box, and most of the time it did. So major exceptions would be anything that does loading assets, or working with assets that needs a little bit of adjustment. And in that case, there's usually ongoing work in those libraries, or updated versions. So for example, the newer P5 sound library is an example of something that like it's 2.0 compatible, but because it's 2.0 compatible, it's also compatible with 1.x. So it's
Right.
it's more in that direction. So and this is one of those things. Another reason that it's still something that I really, really hope that you try 2.0 and report your experience with it. And it's still not going to be like the default until next year, because it would be really good to develop more resources around it, including the community libraries, that provide so much like amazing possibility.
Yeah. Great. There's another question from the chat that I get this question a lot and I don't really have an answer
Mm-hmm.
for, which is asking about the current state of SVG support in P5, or if that on the horizon SVG support as a possible integration for 2.0.
So there's kind of two
I guess
parts
that's
of
also on
SV.
the importing and exporting, or like the
Yeah, I
rendering.
was
I
gonna
guess
say
there's a lot
there's
of
like two
components to
parts of
that.
that. In terms of working in SVG directly, which is not quite exporting, but like like using an SVG renderer, there's like the P5 SVG community library, and there's like very active work to support 2.0 there. Generally, under the hood, it's much easier to work with SVG, like more directly and with shapes. The kind of updates to shape make it very, very like possible to start importing SVGs. This is something that's like on a future roadmap rather than something that's available right now. But this is one of those things that like it is so much more possible now, and that's part of what's really exciting about it.
Great. So as we're kind of getting, first of all, we can take more questions. So if people have other questions, please feel free to add them in the chat. I'm kind of doing my, console management here to kind of keep track of everything. But one thing I would like to, I think would be useful to go over, Kit, as we get close to wrapping up. We've talked a lot about, leave feedback, you get in touch, try this, let us know how it goes.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that I see especially that becomes a big source of confusion for beginners especially is, well, okay, I know there's GitHub and I could file an issue. There's the official forums, there's like Discourse, there's also like a Discord.
Yeah.
And certain spaces can feel kind of intimidating, or you feel like, oh, am I asking this in the wrong place? So, I don't know. What can you give a few tips, or at least kind of list through what are the different platforms for how anyone could share what they're making, give feedback, report a bug, that kind of thing.
Yeah. I think that there's like the public forums that you mentioned in GitHub. I guess. I'll send all the links to you afterwards so you can also include them. But there's the 2.x status board. That's a good overview of what's happening. You can also file issues. There's a p5.js Discord, and then there's a processing discourse. And so those are all public places that you can leave things. You can email. We're happy to answer. So you can email hello@p5js.org. You can email kit@processingfoundation.org. So I think this is one of those things where if you really want to participate, want to share your thoughts, and you're like, particularly especially if you're feeling intimidated, but for any other reason, please rather reach out than not. Especially if you run into an issue. I see already a few things that people mentioned that are an issue, but please get in touch because I may or may not already be aware of some of those things or the particular details that you're running into them. On the discourse, I've also shared like an office hours link. So if you're more of like chatting rather than emailing or text kind of person, so there's like there's a couple of hours where you can drop in and like chat with me for a few minutes and just like ask like, I have this thing, where do I go to figure out the next step? Or one of the questions can be like, here's a project I'm working on, like how can I add it to the website? As a community? Like if you, for example, have created an add-on library and you want to know how to add it to the list and you're not like 100% sure, just let me know that that's a question that you have and I'm happy to answer it. Same for you've created like an educational resource of some sort, and you'd like some support with like making a PR to the website about that, or you want to maybe work on an issue or something and you're just like not sure which one to start on. Like we have a lot of good first issue and help needed tags, but especially if you're really new to it, it can still be really overwhelming. There's a lot of ongoing work also at the same time. So I'm super happy to help you navigate that.
Wonderful. Yeah, and I'll just note, thank you to Shin and Raphael. They've been posting links into the chat to the discourse. The Discord, I know it's confusing. There's Discourse, Discord. Those are two different things. One is like a web
totally
forum,
different parts of the internet.
But yeah. Thank you for also the discourse post about P5 2.0. You are here and how to contribute. Those are the official places to go. I will also say, you can, the Coding Train has its own Discord, thecodingtrain.com/Discord. You can find it. And if you're lost, and you found your way there, we'll help you find your way to the P5 spaces from there.
And as Shin also mentioned earlier, if you post stuff on social media with like hashtag P5V2, if you've found something cool that you want to share with the community, that's also one of the venues to get in touch.
Yeah. I think it's wonderful that the 2.0 process. It's funny. I remember reading about the 2.0 plan, and it always said August 2026. And in my, I think as when the default would switch. But in my head for a long time, I just assumed that I just wasn't thinking. I was like, oh, this August, because you're being so thoughtful for leaving all this time all the way until August before the school year starts. And then I realized, like, oh, you're not only doing that, you're leaving all that time plus an entire year of the school
Yeah,
year.
yeah, because it's
So,
like I really, really hope that this is like
yeah,
by releasing it, by making it available, we hope to reach the widest possible set of people who are like currently using P5 but haven't really like gotten involved in any of the decision making around it. And I think that's like extremely
yeah,
important, especially because there's a lot of new things. So
right.
like please feel welcome to share any of your thoughts or ideas or struggles with it.
Yeah, and I know especially I've talked to some teachers, there's some trepidation around the sort of async await model, which is a fairly significant change because in terms of how data is loaded. Like the first time you have your student in your class want to like, take a picture of a beautiful flower, upload it to the web editor, load it and show it in your P5 sketch. That's really changing from preload to
Yep.
await. And so this is something that I'm really excited. I think that I'm really excited to help people figure out how it works and learn how to integrate that new model. I'll mention that the ML5 library, which is a JavaScript library for loading machine learning models that I've been working on for a number of years now, we work on it at NYU, just over the summer switched over support to loading the machine learning models with await, async and await. So stay tuned. That's something that I will be covering quite a bit this fall in my weekly live stream. So if people have questions and want to learn more about that, let me know what your questions are, reach out. I'm excited to be covering that, especially in terms of all the new stuff with P5 2.0. All right, I'm poking through around it. Did you have anything else you wanted to show or talk about, Kit? Just poking through the chat to see if I missed any important questions.
I think we covered a lot of ground. I feel like I remember a question earlier around sound.
Yes, I just
Um,
saw that. So there is this question here: how do you add a sound to P5? Which has a very, which has a short answer and a long answer. I'll let you, I'll let you give your answer, Kit, and I'll
I'll give
chime
like
in.
my
Yeah,
mesoscale answer,
yeah,
and then you can do the long and short.
yeah,
Um, so there is such a library called P5 Sound.js. You can find it in a couple of different places. There's in the library management tab, there's also like a sound one, and that's going to link directly to the reference in that. So that might be the easiest place to do. So if you're opening a new sketch in the library management, whether you switch to or one or any version of P5, right underneath it is P5 Sound.js, and that will link right to the reference. And just there was recently a release at the end of last year of a new iteration of P5 Sound.js, which is much more kind of focused and based on Tone.js. So that's the kind of the newer one that's part of the beta website. Then there's links to examples on the README file of that repository. There's a couple of examples on the website and so on. But basically, if you find any example on p5js.org or beta.p5js.org and it uses sound, then that's use the corresponding versions and report issues and
yeah.
so on. But this is also something that we really hope to expand the tutorials and resources on, because it's something that's really, really exciting, and that right now there's not too many examples of how to use sound. So it's a really, really
Yeah.
good question.
Yeah, that's great. So I'm excited about this in particular. P5 2.0 has been like a really wonderful timing for me because I've wanted to get back into streaming again, recording new videos. A lot of my P5 tutorials are, I mean, at least like close to 10 years old at this point. Some of them use this very, very old desktop editor. Anybody remembers that original desktop editor? It was actually created by Sam Levine, who's somebody that I've worked with here in New York. You can go back and feel nostalgic for that interesting, strange experiment at that time. Anyway, but I have a set. I'm not really like one of my areas of weakness, I would say, is working with sort of sound and music and computation and algorithms. But I do have a set of sound video examples and tutorials, and I'm hoping to also update those this fall. Okay, I'm going to give you a break for being on screen, Kit, as we wrap up here. Thank you. Actually, I'm going to put you back on screen just to say a big thank you for coming and participating in this slightly, my sort of chaotic way of organizing these streams. Actually, I'm quite, I don't want to jinx myself here as we wrap up, but pat myself on the back here that the technology actually did work for having you be a guest and sharing your screen and all of that. We can, you're welcome anytime. Anyone from P5 and the Processing Foundation is welcome. We can do some more collaborative stuff later this fall. If that makes sense. But everyone, please say your thank yous and give a round of applause to Kit for giving us this overview of P5 2.0.
And thanks for hosting. Thanks for inviting me, and thanks everybody for your attention and your questions, and I really appreciate it. So looking forward to stay in touch. Somebody asked if there's a schedule for a weekly live stream.
Yes.
So I don't.
Yes,
I don't do. Oh, go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead. Yeah, I think that was go. Yeah, go ahead.
Was that to you or to me, do you think?
I think it was for. I assumed it was for me, but maybe that's just very
okay. That makes more sense. Yeah.
Okay, so I will answer that. So I'm going to take you off screen. Your audio is still live, Kit, just so you know, because I don't have a way of muting you easily. Yeah. So just to answer that question and to update everyone, so I do have one other summer stream that I hope to do. That I mentioned. It's a collaboration with Dr. Christian Hubicki, who is a professor in Florida State University in robotics. We did a stream anyway, that's going to happen, but it's maybe going to happen this summer, but maybe in September. That's not to answer your question. But the schedule is, and my whiteboard went to sleep, so I won't bring it back up here. My schedule is starting this fall, September 8th, I think is the first day that I am available. I will be streaming every Monday. So there should be a stream every Monday, probably around this time, 11 a.m. Eastern, maybe 10 a.m. Eastern. I try to get started early in the morning. Some of those Mondays, there might be two, a morning and an afternoon. Maybe I'm being way too ambitious, promising more than I can actually do. But my goal is to be streaming weekly. I'll be doing beginner P5 lessons, as well as a variety of other topics, from looking at some of the newer machine learning models that p5.js uses, continuing some of my simulation and physics videos with Nature of Code. I am teaching a class this fall that looks at language models. I'm not just talking about the latest and greatest big tech, like giant hyperscaled transformer models, but looking at Markov models and other types of simple kinds of language modeling and text generation stuff. So that's what's coming. I hope so. There'll be live streams every Monday. And Mathieu, I know, is Math Blank is in the chat, who does all of the video editing for the Coding Train channel. We're hoping to have a plan where the live streams will happen on Monday. Sections of those live streams will be cut out and edited into shorter tutorial videos, which will then get uploaded by the time the next Monday rolls around, and rinse and repeat. We're going to see if that's how things were on the Coding Train over a decade ago, and I'm going to see if I can kind of get back to my roots of kind of doing things in a more agile way. So thanks, everybody. I'm going to wrap things up. This was a robust and lengthy live stream, fully appropriate for the amount of time and the content that we showed you. But I'm also kind of amazed, because I'm always like, what would it mean to live stream for just an hour and 15 minutes? Not for suddenly being like, I'm going to live stream for an hour and a half, but that turns into 2 hours and 3 hours, and then I get stuck on a bug, and before I know it, 4 hours have passed. So thank you, everybody. I'm going to play this little outro song here. My system is still, every time I live stream, I update a few technology things, and things are getting better. So let me put this on. This is the Polar to Cartesian song. This was from many years ago, when people used to take some of my tutorials and turn them into music. Doesn't happen anymore, but if you want to, that's still something you could do. I don't have a screen to go to. Where do I go now when I'm not live anymore? I know what I can do. I can go to, I'm going to put the p5.js 2.0 website full screen. And I'm going to mute myself, let this song play out, and then hit the stop button. That's how it works. Okay, goodbye, everybody. Thank you so much. See you. I don't have I don't have a screen for just this. I have to be, I gotta go and turn the camera off. Or I could just walk away. I'll just stand here awkwardly. Oh, I'm muted. No, I'm not muted. You can still hear me. See, all the technical problems, I saved them all for the last 2 minutes. This song's very short. I'll say goodbye to people in the chat. Put your comments on screen. Bye, Alka. Oh, it's over already. Goodbye, everyone. I'm gonna hit the finish button. See you next time. Maybe another time in August, surprise stream. If not, stay tuned. Look on YouTube, subscribe, bell, all that nonsense. But should be September 8th, if that's a Monday. See you then.